Hey guys, my name is Brad. I'm the lead pastor here at New Life Church, and I want to welcome you to our online teachings. One of our core convictions as a church is that everyone is welcome, no one is perfect, and anything is possible. Now, I know for some of us, coming into a church building might be intimidating, it might be scary, and man, I get that. But I want you to know that there is always a place of love and belonging for you in our community. No matter who you are or what your life looks like, we believe that you were built for real, in-person, face-to-face community. And so if you want to get more information about our service times or our location, you can do so on our website, newlifewayland.org. But for now, I hope you know you're loved, and I hope that God speaks powerfully to you through today's talk.
Good morning, good morning. How are you guys today? Come on, guys. How are you today? Good. Anybody else excited to celebrate some baptisms later? Yeah, I am so pumped. If I don't know you, if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Brad. I'm the pastor here at New Life. And even looking out and seeing people in the lobby, I see a lot of new faces here today. And I imagine, we're excited that you're here. I imagine some of you are here to watch and support family members and friends that are making this important faith step today. I imagine others of you are still just kind of checking things out and getting to know the church. And I just want you to know, no matter where you're at on your faith journey, or even whether or not you call New Life home, you are welcome here. That you have a place here, and that our desire for you is to help you get connected and to find a home, to find refuge, to find sanctuary and safety in this place. And so, if you want to get connected, we have this thing called the new guest area right outside after service. You don't have to get up now or out yourself or anything like that, but we would love to get you connected. The sole purpose of that area is to help you take your next step here at the church and make this place feel like home. So, with that being said, I would love to invite somebody very special and also somebody that's pretty new to New Life up here, and that's Olivia Anderson. If you want to give it up for Olivia. Now, Olivia is our youth pastor Josh's wife. So she is here. You're going to help in student ministry. She's got a special heart for students and for young people. And so I asked her if she'd be willing to read our passage for us this morning. But I'm going to give a little caveat. I think that I picked one of the passages with the hardest words to pronounce in it, and some names that are hard to pronounce. So we're all just going to pretend like we know exactly how they're pronounced today. Does that sound good? Awesome.
Okay, the scripture for today is Mark 3, verses 7 through 19. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed. When they heard all he was doing, many people came to him from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, and the regions across the Jordan and around Tyre and Sidon. Because of the crowd, he told his disciples to have a small boat ready for him, to keep the people from crowding to him. For he had healed many, so that those with diseases were pushing forward to touch him. Whenever the evil spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." But he gave them strict orders not to tell who he was. Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to them those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12, designating them apostles, that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed: Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them he gave the name Boanerges, which means son of thunder. Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Olivia. So, as we begin our teaching today, I want to begin by asking you a question. Now, if you're new to our church, one of the things that you need to know about us is we're not a very quiet bunch. In fact, we love to yell out answers. We love to yell things out. And this is one of those times where I want you to answer this question for me. I want some answers. This is not rhetorical. I want your opinion and your input on this. So I'm going to begin by asking this question. What is the best concert, show, or game you have ever attended in person? What is the best? Wow, I heard approximately nothing there. I heard Nickelback, which you can just get out, because that's not okay. Let me hear some other ones. What was that? Pentatonic. Oh, that would be good in concert. Was it a Christmas concert or just a regular one? Oh, that's incredible. What else? Alice Cooper. Love it. What was that? Shawn Mendes. Yes. Trans-Siberian Orchestra. They are really good. Anybody else? U2. What did you say, Meg? Coldplay. Oh, yeah. The hipsters over there hanging out. What about some sporting events? Anybody been to a really good game before? Michigan, Notre Dame. Green Bay Packers. Notice how nobody says Lions because they never have a good game. Well, I'm going to share with you one of the best concerts, one of the best shows that I've ever been to. And that is a couple years ago. My wife Sam and I got to go over to Detroit and see Ed Sheeran in person. Any Ed Sheeran fans in here? A couple? Yes, I have the taste in music of a high school girl. I know that, okay? I'm confident enough to say that. But this was at the Ford Field. For once, there was celebration and happiness in Ford Field. And this was one of the most incredible concerts I had ever been to. You could just feel the energy. The excitement was palpable. I mean, tens of thousands of people. And if you know anything about Ed Sheeran, you know he's an incredibly talented musician. And so, literally, he is the only guy on stage with a guitar kind of bouncing around and singing, and he can captivate an entire room of tens of thousands of people being the only one on stage. In fact, I took some video of the concert, some Instagram stories, which, if you don't know, are just 15-second snippets of the concert, and I want you to experience some of it with me for a second here. So here's 2 quick videos. It's just like being there in person, isn't it? No, it's nothing like being there in person. There is an entirely different experience between watching a 15-second snippet with crappy audio and video quality and being immersed in an experience where the energy of the room and the excitement of what's going on is captivating and electrifying. Let me ask you a question. Many of you are going to be watching the Super Bowl in a week from today. Who wants Chiefs to win? 2, 3 people. Who doesn't care? Most of us. Because, like, the most obscure, what's the other team in it? 49ers. There we go. Thank you. Who wants 49ers to win? Okay, so a few more. Awesome. Let me ask you a question. Is watching the Super Bowl on your TV anything like going down to Miami and watching it in person? Okay. I have a friend that just got a 75-inch TV. 75, is that it? Okay, I want to make sure you get every inch in there because, and that's going to be pretty cool. But I would argue it's probably not the same as going there and watching it in person. Because there's a difference between being exposed to something like that, watching it on a TV or a screen, and being immersed in experiencing it for all that it is in person. There's a reason why front row seats cost more than nosebleed seats, right? And there's a reason why backstage passes are more exclusive than front row seats, because the closer you get, the more you get to experience all that it is. I mean, imagine the high school girls sitting in the front row seat of an Ed Sheeran concert or Shawn Mendes concert and being like, he sweated on me. Like they love that. Or going backstage and being able to say, he signed my forehead and I'm never showering ever again. So what does this have to do with Jesus? I promise it does have something to do with Jesus. What it has to do with Jesus is the same thing is true of Jesus. That exposure to Jesus, watching him from a distance, watching him in the crowd, is not the same thing as experiencing him up close and personal. They're not the same thing. You see, in the passage that Olivia just read, and we've been walking through the book of Mark if you're new with us for the last several weeks, which is a jam-packed, action-filled account of Jesus' life. And as you've noticed what's happened, Jesus is doing some incredible things, right? He's healing people. He's casting out demons. He's speaking with authority. It wasn't uncommon for people and crowds to follow prophets and teachers like this, but Jesus was like nothing they had seen before. In fact, the way that Jesus was healing and the things that Jesus were doing were reminiscent of somebody even greater than a prophet like Elijah or Moses or Jeremiah. Jesus captivated people, and people were desperate to get to him. He had a celebrity status in his day, and people were desperate for even the nosebleed seats. So I want you to imagine something with me this morning. Imagine that that Jesus is living today, and he is gaining this reputation for being able to heal people and cast out demons and do all of these crazy things. And on one hand, you have the opportunity to watch him heal a child with cancer on your phone. And you get to see it, and it's incredible. But then imagine the experience of bringing your own child that's sick and hurting to his feet and watching him heal your own child. Those are two completely different experiences, aren't they? Because being exposed to Jesus is not the same thing as experiencing Jesus and all he has to offer. And I would argue that in this room, even in our country, I would say nearly 100% of people have been exposed to Jesus. There aren't really like unreached people groups in the United States who have never heard the name Jesus. All of us, like 100% of the people in this room are being exposed to Jesus right now, unless you're on your phone. I'm going to call you out for that. No, I'm just kidding. I won't do that. Because sometimes I get distracted, right? And so 100% of us have been exposed to Jesus, but not all of us have experienced him for ourselves. You see, we live in a country where 8 in 10 people claim the name Christian. We've all been exposed to Jesus. We have a national day of prayer. We have all been exposed to Jesus. We have 10 versions of the God Not Dead movies. We've all been exposed to Jesus in some way. Maybe you've been in a church every single day of your life, every single Sunday. You've never missed a week. That doesn't mean that you've experienced Jesus for yourself. You can stand and you can sing and you can worship and you can raise your hands. That still doesn't mean that you've experienced Jesus for yourself. You know, maybe you have had a bad experience in church. Somebody's hurt you or somebody has done something wrong towards you. And you don't want anything to do with it. You walk away. I would argue that you have left before you've had an experience with Jesus yourself. Maybe you have a family member and you think to yourself, man, they are so far from God. And if only they could experience Jesus for themselves, things would be different for them. See, I think a lot of people say no to faith because they confuse being exposed to Jesus with experiencing him for themselves. That's not for me. That might be good for them. That might be meaningful for them, but I'm just going to watch from a distance. I don't want anything to do with that for myself. I want you to just imagine for a second, what could God do in your life if you experienced him front row seat, up close and personal? What patterns could he heal? What addictions could he speak into? What pain and suffering could he walk alongside you with? What generational just kind of junk and cycles could he actually address if you were to experience him for yourself, not some version that your parents handed you, but him as he is for yourself? What could that mean for your life? So in this passage today, Mark 3, I want to just dive into this because I believe whether or not you have trusted in Jesus for 50 years or you have never trusted in Jesus, there is something to be experienced of Jesus today in this word. So let's dive into the passage that Olivia just read for us. Mark chapter 3, verse 7 through 10, and I am going to pretend like I know how to pronounce these locations. Let's go. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, and a great crowd followed him from Galilee and Judea. So we have this great crowd. And Jerusalem and Idumea, and from beyond the Jordan, and from around Tyre and Sidon. When the great crowd heard all that he was doing, they came to him. And he told his disciples to have a boat ready for him because of the crowd, lest they crush him. For he had healed many, so that all who had diseases pressed around him to touch him. Jesus has massive groups of people that want exposure to him. They want to witness what he can do. They want to see him be healed. Maybe it's personal for them. If there was a guy like that living today, I don't know about you, but I would want to watch it. Even if I was skeptical of it, I'd want to watch it. I'd want to see him do it. If I had somebody that was sick in my life, I'd want to at least get them as close to him as I possibly could. If there was even a chance that he could heal them, I would want to do anything it would take to get them to him. I think of my friends, Steve and Amanda, who have a 5-year-old girl who's going through chemotherapy right now. She's losing her hair. She's spending weeks at a time in Helen DeVos Hospital. She is sick and she is hurting. I would want to get her to him, and they want to get her to him. I'd want to get my friends walking through dark seasons of depression and anxiety as close as possible to him, with some belief that he could speak something into their lives. I'd want to bring my sick parent or my sick friend to him to have some kind of experience with him, not just exposed to him, not just hearing about him, but with him. And so can you blame the crowds for wanting to congregate around Jesus? Can you blame them? No. I'd want to get close to him. I'd want to do whatever it takes to get close to him. I think about celebrities today, and Jesus literally, he is, I think the closest comparison we have is he is full-on celebrity status during this time. And I saw the craziest news story about a celebrity the other day. It blew my mind, and it was this, if you want to throw it up there, Heather. It says, Prince Harry was spotted flying commercial back from Japan. Who cares? Why are we so obsessed with the royal family here? I don't get it. But he's he's spotted flying commercial back from Japan. They are watching his every move to the point of what he eats and how he burps and all of this stuff that's just stupid and nobody cares. And I read this passage of Jesus here and it says, lest the crowds crush him. Think back to the 90s when Prince Harry's mom was killed in a car accident. And I read the other day that one of the reasons he's kind of leaving royalty is he's never been the same since that happened. His desire is to kind of step away from the crowds, to step away from the limelight. His mom literally was killed because she was running from the crowds, trying to get away. This is a similar experience that Jesus has. More and more people, it says in the text here, they're actually leaving their hometown to go follow him other places. They want to be near him. They want to follow him. They want to experience and be exposed to something that Jesus has to offer. I don't know about you, but if I was Jesus in this time and place, I'd be a little annoyed by the crowds. Who are all these people that are trying to use me and just get to me and just want something out of me? But watch what Jesus' response is to the crowds. Watch how Jesus responds to these crowds and these hordes of people that follow him. This is a text from Matthew. It's the kind of comparable text to what we're looking at in Mark here. And this is how Matthew describes Jesus' response. Jesus walked throughout the region with the joyful message of God's kingdom realm. He taught in their meeting houses. And wherever he went, he demonstrated God's power by healing every kind of disease and illness. When he saw the vast crowds of people, Jesus' heart was deeply moved with compassion because they seemed weary. They seemed helpless, like wandering sheep without a shepherd. How does Jesus respond to the crowds and the hordes of people? He loves them. He has compassion on them. He sees what they're struggling with and what they're going through. He doesn't see them as masses of people. He sees them as individual people that need something, that are hungry for his presence in their lives. The language in this text in Matthew, literally, it's kind of gross, and I may have talked about this before, but it's almost comparable to like a bowel movement of compassion inside of Jesus, which sounds so weird, but this is literally how scholars describe it, the language here. Like there's something guttural. There's something so deep inside Jesus that is moved. Like have you ever loved somebody so much that you can like feel it in your gut? Like maybe they've hurt you and you just feel that in your gut, or they're distant and you just crave them to come home. And you can just feel that love inside of you. I know that's how I feel towards my wife and my kids some days. I'm just kidding. I probably shouldn't have said that. I love my children. My wife every day, my kids some days is what I meant. There you go. The point is, Jesus sees the crowds, and he doesn't just love the attention from the crowds. He doesn't love the celebrity from the crowds. What he loves is the people in the crowds. He loved the crowds so much that he healed them. He loved the crowds so much that he is moved to compassion by them. He loved the crowds so much that his entire ministry was built around teaching the crowds what his kingdom realm would look like. He loved them so much that there were times where he saw the crowd and he simply wept over them. Jesus loved the crowd. And I think about the shame of some of those people in the crowds. I think about some of the stories in the Gospels of Jesus and the crowds. I think about the woman who has been bleeding for 10 years. She is full of shame. She's considered unclean in her culture. Nobody would want to touch her. Nobody would want to be near her, and she crawls up behind Jesus as he's walking, and she simply grabs the tail of his cloak and is healed. And Jesus sees her for who she is. Not somebody undesirable, not somebody untouchable, but a daughter, a sister. I think about the men with leprosy that Jesus healed. Luke literally describes Jesus going to these places called the border places where nobody wanted to go. And he sees the crowds in those places and he heals lepers. When nobody wants to touch them, Jesus touches them. Jesus heals them. Jesus does something phenomenal for these people. When everybody else assumed the blind man had sinned and was therefore blind, Jesus sees the humanity in him. Jesus saw people. People on their deathbeds, people unclean, people hurting, people that everybody else ran away from. Jesus saw the crowds. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I can relate to the crowd. Maybe you're in this place and it feels safer just to be anonymous. It feels safer just to kind of be a face in the crowd, hoping that nobody will notice what I'm going through, hoping that nobody will call it out or see it because that's easier and that's safer. Maybe you're here and you're in the crowd and you're intrigued by this guy Jesus, but you don't want to get too close to him. You don't want to draw attention to yourself, so it's easier just to stay back. Maybe you're here and you're thinking to yourself, if only he knew what I've done. If only he knew what I did last week or last night, he wouldn't want to see me. And so it's easier to remain in the crowd. Maybe you think to yourself, if he could guarantee me results in my time and exactly how I want it, then I would put myself out there for him. If he could heal this in this time frame, I would put myself out there for him. If he could heal my marriage exactly the way that I want him to, then I'll put myself out there for him. If he could fix my financial situation, then I'll put myself out there for him. Some of us are simply content just being exposed to Jesus, but not actually experiencing him. Some of us are content just staying in the crowd and watching him do all kinds of cool things for other people, but we have actually not taken the steps to see him do anything cool for us in our lives. So I want you to write down this statement with me today. It says this: if I stay in the crowd, I'll never go any further than the crowd. If I stay in the crowd, I'll never go any further than the crowd. I don't want to be just a fan from a distance when it comes to Jesus. Somebody in the stands that he doesn't know or doesn't see. Someone who just gets to watch him on an iPhone screen from a distance but doesn't actually get to experience all that he has to offer me. He may do a bunch of cool things for other people while I stay stuck and unhealed. I might be somebody who knows a lot about him, but that's all I'm going to get. I'm not actually going to know him intimately and well. I might admire him from a distance, but I won't actually get to experience any kind of intimate friendship with him. I think this is what so many of us settle for in faith, where we just kind of stay at a distance, we stay skeptical, we stay stuck, and we wonder why. I think there's some Christians who choose a lifetime of staying in the crowd, where Sundays, once a week or once a month, is the entire expression of my faith. And there's no times and periods in my week where I actually set aside time just to be with Jesus, just to sit in his presence and experience all that he has to offer. I'm exposed to Jesus on Sundays every once in a while, but there's nothing more than that. Let me tell you, friends, that's not enough. It's not enough just to come and sit in this place. This is a great place to start, but God has more for you. He wants to reveal himself more to you than even just what we experience here today. Maybe I've believed in Jesus, I've trusted in him, but I haven't actually taken any meaningful step in my life to offer him anything that hurts a little bit. I haven't taken any steps in my life to trust him with finances or to take a step of faith that's risky and vulnerable and hard and, dare I say, risks embarrassment. I think too many of us settle. I might believe he's my ticket to heaven, but my salvation doesn't mean anything for me here and now. That I'm still walking around with shame, that I'm still walking around with guilt, and he hasn't actually healed what is broken and hurting in my life. Guys, exposure to Jesus, being in the crowd, it's a beautiful place to start. But it is not a beautiful place to stay. It is a beautiful place to first experience the love of Jesus, to watch him do cool things for other people. But he doesn't desire for us just to stay in the crowd. He desires more for you. So I want you to check out what he does in this same passage in the very next verses. Verse 13 of Mark 3, it says, "And he went up on the mountain and called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him." I want to read that first verse again, or that first part again. "And Jesus went up on the mountain and called to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12, whom he also named apostles," which literally means to be sent out, "so that they might be with him, and he might send them out to preach and have authority to cast out demons. He appointed the 12. Simon, who we talked about a few weeks ago, the fisherman, to whom he gave the name Peter. James, the son of Zebedee, and John, the brother of James, to whom he gave the name we'll just call them Thor, sons of thunder, okay? I love that, sons of thunder. That'd be a cool name to have. It actually was not that positive of a thing, and we'll get into why they were named that another week. But Andrew and Philip and Bartholomew and Matthew and Thomas and James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus and Simon the Zealot, the guy who would be willing to kill Roman officials without a second glance. That's what it meant to be a zealot. And Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Man, this is a group of people, right? It's kind of a motley little crew who don't have much in common with each other, except they don't really like each other that much. And they're kind of always butting heads and trying to win out over Jesus. Yet Jesus calls these guys to him, the ones whom he desired. You see, I think we need to understand how radical this is for Jesus to do in this time and day. Jesus was a Jewish rabbi, and when Jewish rabbis had disciples behind them, they never called those disciples. Those disciples came to them and begged them to let them follow him. And so for Jesus to call these guys, it was kind of a flip of the cultural norm of that time. You see, what would typically happen is you've had boys and girls that would go to school till about age 12, okay? And they would study, and they would learn what's called the Torah, and they'd memorize it. Can you imagine having 5 books of the Bible memorized by age 12? I mean, age 31, you have them all. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have them memorized. That's a pretty incredible feat. But what most people would do at that time, all girls and most boys would go either into the family trade or they would go have babies, okay? And so at age 12 to 15, most students who were not like the top of their class would go into the family trade like fishing. And so what happens here is Jesus sees these fishermen, which means they were not the best of the best in their class. In fact, the next round of people would be the best of the best boys who would study under a scribe or a Pharisee. And they would learn the Tanakh, which is the entirety of the Hebrew Scriptures. Okay? Like imagine memorizing the entirety of the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament today. And so they were the best of the best. And then what would happen is out of that group of people, the Harvard-level students, I mean the top of the top of the top of the top, would then go to a rabbi. And they would say, this is my pedigree. This is what I've accomplished. Can I please become your disciple? And what the rabbi would do is he would interview them and drill them and make sure they had what it took to be their disciple. And the rabbis would only invite the best of the best of the best to enter into this discipling relationship. Now let's look at the list again that Jesus invited to follow him. Simon, known for having a temper. James and John struggle with immense pride issues. They're the guys that want to be on his right and his left in the kingdom. We got Andrew and Philip. Andrew, a fisherman. Bartholomew and Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector, hated by Jewish people. Viewed as a sellout to earn a quick buck. Thomas. Anybody know what Thomas was known for? Doubting. Doubting Thomas. Forever and always, he'll be known as Doubting Thomas. Simon the Zealot, who I already said would kill a Roman official without a second glance. And Judas Iscariot. What was Judas known for? Betraying Jesus. These are the guys, this is the motley crew that Jesus invites to be his disciples. This is the crew that Jesus sees something inside and says, come, follow me. Jesus chose his disciples. He invited them into this relationship. And these 11 guys change the world. Jesus invites ordinary, everyday people to experience him. It's not the most wealthy. It's not the most well-connected or the most well-educated. It's not even the most moral and well-behaved that he invites to experience him up close and personal. He's not looking for the most worthy. He's not looking for the best of the best. He's looking for people who are willing to step out of the crowd and experience life with him. That's who he's looking for. That's who he's always called to follow him. And I know there are some of us in this room today who believe you don't have what it takes to follow Jesus, that you either don't measure up or you have too many questions or too many unresolved doubts in your life. And I'm here to tell you, you don't have to have it all figured out before you step into experiencing Jesus. That's the beauty of life with Jesus, is that we figure it out as we go. That we say, Jesus, I am all in. It doesn't mean I'm perfect. It doesn't even mean that I'm all that worthy, but I am all in for you. And I'm willing to follow you wherever it leads. I think what Jesus does next in this text is absolutely beautiful. And this is where I kind of want to bring things in as we begin to think about what this means for us. Just a few verses later, in verse 31, it says this, and Jesus' mother and his brothers came, and standing outside, they sent to him and called him. And what's that next word? Crowd. Shocker, right? Crowd was sitting around him. And they said to him, your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you. And he answered them, who are my mother and my brothers? And looking at the crowd, looking at those sat around him, he said, Here are my mother and my brothers. So he's talking to the crowd. He's saying, you all are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and my sister and my mother. So watch the progression here. This is incredible. It goes from crowd. If you want to throw up that slide, Heather, it goes from crowd. Oh, I have another verse, don't I? No, I think I'm good. Okay, so crowd. It's all good here. You're good. So it starts with the crowd, right? The masses of people, the people that watch Jesus from a distance, the people that watch Jesus do other really cool healing and things for other people. And then out of the crowd, Jesus invites people to be disciples. And then from there, he invites disciples to become family. You see the progression here? Crowd to disciples to family. Crowd to disciples to family. And by the way, he says, whoever does my will. Whoever means whoever. Anyone. Everyone is invited. So I want to ask you, just leaving that slide up there, where are you at right now? Where would you put yourself? Would you put yourself in the crowd? Would you put yourself as a disciple? Or would you put yourself as family? And by the way, when you become family, you don't stop being a disciple. I'm going to just give you a few things to think about here as you think about where you fall in this. If you're in the crowd, you might attend church every once in a while, but that's it for faith. You hear me talk every Sunday, but you say to yourself, that's not my experience of God. That's not my experience of who Jesus is. God feels silent and distant to me. Maybe you're here and you're in the crowd and you are a Christian, you've claimed the name Christian, but you haven't actually taken the step to get baptized. Baptism is literally a step out of the crowd. By going public for Jesus, what you're doing is you're saying, I am willing to step out of the crowd and into becoming a disciple and a family member. Maybe you're living in shame and fear, and your name that you've given yourself is condemnation and shame, and you're too afraid to talk about it with anybody. Only people next to you knew what you've done. Maybe you're a disciple. You've said yes to following Jesus. You're in community with other people. You're seeking time with God. You're sharing your faith, and you're becoming more like Jesus, albeit completely imperfect and a little messy. Maybe you're a disciple. The disciples, keep in mind, were really broken, messed up people who didn't have it all figured out. They don't actually understand who Jesus is until much, much later. Maybe your family. And this is the one I really want to drill in because I think this is the goal for each and every one of us, that we would become family with Jesus. That if your family, everything about your experience with Jesus is marked by love. Everything. It's no longer marked by shame. It's no longer marked by guilt. Again, it doesn't mean you're perfect. Hear me on that. We don't get perfect. What it means is that when you make a mistake, when you mess up, you don't go to this place of just complete shame and shutting down. You say, no, you know what, Jesus? You picked me back up again, and I'm going to continue walking with you. Shame has no place in my story. That's what it means to be family. That when you're family, you walk with the full confidence and authority and humility as a son, as a daughter of God. That you are, in fact, Jesus' brother and sister, a co-heir with him in all that God has for you. In the waiting and the suffering, if you are family, you experience peace in the midst of that, peace that you cannot understand. You experience the presence of God even when he feels distant and silent. Don't tell me it's not possible, because I have experienced it so many times in my life. Doesn't mean that the pain hurts any less. It doesn't mean that I love those who are affected by it any less. What it means is that I have the presence of God with me, and I can experience some level of rest in that. If you're family, you can love others well because you know how well you have been loved. If your family, like a new father or mother exploding like guttural love for their newborn baby, this is how you feel towards Jesus and people around you. So friends, I want you to hear this again. Exposure to Jesus is not the same thing as experiencing Jesus. Exposure to Jesus, it's not the same thing as experiencing him for all that he has to offer you. So I want to close with this story today, and the band is going to make their way back up. I want to just talk about how we move to this place of family with Jesus. So this past week was actually a really hard week for me and my family. Shed a lot of tears that I wasn't expecting. So many of you know that we have a little foster baby named Theo, and we've had Theo for about a year or so. And Theo's parents right now are on trial in Kent County for a pretty heinous crime against one of his siblings. It's really dark. It's really ugly. I mean, this past week I've been faced with some of the worst of the worst of the worst of humanity. And I sat in the courtroom for several hours over this past week just weeping over the brokenness in the world, some of which was done in Jesus' name, which is crazy. And there were some people that I noticed in the courtroom sitting there in the back. And I knew who they were from a little Facebook stalking. Don't judge me, you've done it too. And they were Theo's birth grandparents. It was their son on trial for murder that week, this past week. And they sat back there. They're both lawyers. They both live out in Grand Haven. They took Theo's two older siblings, so they have their hands full. They're a little bit older. And I saw them sitting there, and I just could not imagine the pain that they were walking through. Really good, stable people whose son and daughter-in-law did something really horrible. And we had never met these people. They had never met their grandson, Theo. Never even seen a picture of him. They're hurting right now. They're broken. And I thought to myself, man, I could stay a face anonymous in the crowd. They would never know who I was. Or I could go up and speak to them and introduce myself to them. And as I sat there in this moment, like ready to make this decision, the fear welled up. What if they just say, why are you here? What are you doing? What if they like reject me or push me away? See, staying in the crowd, staying anonymous, that's easy. That's safe. That's comfortable. And I sat there with this decision to make of like, what do I do in this moment? And I felt this like nodding from the Spirit of God saying, go introduce yourself to them. Go reassure them that their grandson is doing well, that he's loved. Go be present with them in the midst of a really painful season right now. I'll be honest, I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to step out into that place of risk and vulnerability. I wanted to stay anonymous. But I ended up going and talking to them. I said, hi, I'm Brad. And you could just tell when I first introduced myself, they looked up skeptical, like they've been pretty beat up this week and this last year. And I said, I am the foster dad of your grandson. And you could see it in their eyes. They lit up. They're like, can we see a picture? Like, we love him and we want to know he's loved, but like the two older kids, they don't even know about him yet. They're wrestling with their own demons right now, and we want to know he's loved and we want to know he's okay. You could see it. And I think to myself, what would I have missed? What would they have missed if I just stayed in the crowd? If I just took the easy way out and just stayed silent. And I don't share that because I'm some like great hero. I don't even think it was all that noble of a thing to do. But why I'm sharing it is because stepping out of the crowd is risky. And it's vulnerable. And I think some of us sit in this same place with Jesus where we think to ourselves, what does it mean for me to step out into the crowd? I'm going to be exposed for what I've done. My shame's going to be on display for other people. And I want you to hear that Jesus' invitation is not to shame you. And it's not to beat you down, and it's not to condemn you. Jesus' invitation for you is freedom. freedom from shame. In baptism, we have 10 people getting baptized today. And baptism is this beautiful step that says, you know what? I am willing to step out of the crowd and into family. I am willing to step out of being anonymous because life with Jesus has way too much to offer to me, and I don't want to miss out. I don't just want to be exposed to Jesus from a distance. I want all of him. I want his healing. I want his presence. I want his joy that he offers. I want all of it. So the place that I want to close with today is, what is your next step to become family here? Is it to get baptized? Here's the thing. If you didn't sign up to get baptized, we have extra shirts. We have extra towels. Make the decision today. Spontaneously come up and get baptized. We would love to baptize you. Maybe for you, it's taking the step into serving. I know Josh has been in major recruit mode for student ministry this past couple of weeks. Maybe for you, you feel the tug of God to say, you know what, I want to walk alongside students who are just staying in the crowd right now because they need to know what it feels like to experience family. Maybe for you, it's connecting with somebody you don't know today. Saying, you know what, you are family here. I believe all of us have a next step. And so what I want to do is I want to pray over us. And we're going to go into a time of singing here. And if you have signed up to get baptized today, we would love to invite you during this next song to come up and just line up over here. And after we're done with the song, we'll begin baptisms today. So let's pray together. God, I think about my own life and my own stories of shame and pain. God, I think about how many times I've just been terrified to approach you, wondering what you might think or what you might do. God, I think about the times I've been terrified to make myself vulnerable with other people, to talk about the junk that I'm going through. God, I pray for people in that place right here and right now that are just terrified to step out of the crowd and into family with you. Maybe for some of them, it's because they've had a horrendous experience with their own family. That your name has been beaten into the mud by people who have raised them and claim to love you. God, I pray this morning that we will have freedom from that shame and that darkness. God, that we will be able to experience you for all that you are and all that you're worth exactly as you are here and now. God, we claim that this morning. God, I speak that over these people this morning, that we are family with you. We're not fans. We're not people watching from a distance. We are the people that are experiencing close friendship with you here and now. And so, God, we love you. We thank you for the people who are and will take this important step today. We pray all of this in Jesus' name. And everyone said, amen. Because you've trusted in Jesus, it is my honor, my sister, to baptize you in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So this is what James said. I have lived the past decade with a lot of shame, guilt, and embarrassment. I've never found answers to help manage these feelings until as of recent, when I have accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior. I am no longer going to live a life with shame and guilt. Man, that is what it's all about. I have realized I do not have to have the answers to give myself to the Lord. Today, I resurrect to walk in a newness of life with Jesus Christ as I am baptized.